suspended. The sum says 5 passengers tested positive for COVID-19 on a June 28th flight. The suspension
hey,
of flight
Mr. Agent Man, if you were any good with time zones,
it's also the first suspension of this airline by China's
this
civil
is the
aviation
live
regulator.
play that we
The
didn't
original
expect to
quota
work
of the flight
anyway.
is not allowed to be transferred to other routes.
And we'll just
A former
catch the
Brazilian
first 18
president says
minutes.
the country should have learned from China's efforts in fighting against the novel coronavirus pandemic. Luis de Silva says the Brazilian government should have treated the COVID-19 situation in a more sophisticated way.
Pesca.
That is another unbelievable thing. I mean, unlike China, that has a crisis in one city and was to isolate the city immediately in a way that did not allow the coronavirus to spread across the country. Brazil did the opposite. The president of Brazil first did not believe in the coronavirus, then thought it was something from China. He said it was a small flu that wouldn't harm anyone, and the number of infected by the virus is
Remember, they still call it the Spanish flu.
Brazil so far reported more than 1.6 million COVID-19 cases, the second largest number after the United States. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has urged people in New York City not to get complacent as more businesses resume work in a new phase in easing coronavirus restrictions. Nail salons and dog runs reopened on Monday, and the state has issued guidelines that must be followed by all businesses as they reopen.
New York City goes into phase 3 today.
They all live
No one's
close together.
defining, but there are rules on phase 3, right? It doesn't mean go out and have a party. We have 50% occupancy for personal care services. You have to wear face coverings, customer wear face coverings, 6-foot distance.
Indoor dining is postponed indefinitely to prevent a spike in new infections, which has been experienced in other parts of the country. Cuomo says he's concerned about reports of large holiday gatherings over the weekend in New York City and local governments to enforce social distancing rules.
We get complacent, we get cocky, we get a little arrogant. That is a real threat, and it's a threat that I'm concerned about. You look at the festivities over July 4th, you see gatherings that are not socially distanced. They're not wearing masks. You see it in Manhattan. You see it on Fire Island. There are reports upstate.
Ask all these idiots how
announced the cancellation of the New York State Fair scheduled for August 21st through September 7th in Syracuse. He also reported 9 new deaths from the coronavirus and 518 new infections recorded statewide on Sunday. India has overtaken Russia to become the 3rd worst affected nation by the coronavirus after reporting over 24,000 new cases on Monday. India has now confirmed over 697,000 cases, while Russia has over 680,000. Some residents in India have welcomed the government's response to the pandemic, while others are anxious to return to normal life.
Earlier, there used to be less testing, and now the government has increased the testing. So people have facilities for tests.
I'm feeling very good because after such a long time, all the monuments have opened. So we plan to visit them again.
Indian authorities withdrew a planned reopening of the famed Taj Mahal monument after new cases were detected in the area. India's Culture Ministry plans to reopen all monuments across the country on Monday after more than 3 months with a cap on the number of visitors. India's eased restrictions in most parts of the country for high-risk areas. And for more on COVID-19, subscribe to our podcast, Coronavirus, What's Really Going On, which brings you everything you need to know about the novel coronavirus. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, coming up, marking the anniversary of Japan's full-scale invasion of China. Want to know what's trending in China? China Plus News Facebook page helps you to discover the real China, from the latest news to quirky Chinese inventions, videos, photos, live streaming, and more. Join in the conversation today by searching for China Plus News on Facebook and discover its news, its people, its traditions and culture. China Plus News Facebook page. Open your eyes to real China.
Canadian military technology.
Today marks the 83rd anniversary of the July 7th incident, the start of Japan's full-scale invasion of China. China-Japan relationships had many ups and downs over the years. It improved during the most difficult period of the COVID-19 pandemic in East Asia, but soured again recently after a Japanese city tried to rename the Diaoyu Islands. And for more on the China-Japan relationship, Huang Yue spoke to Deputy Director Yang Dajing from the Institute of Japanese Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences.
Firstly, how do you evaluate the opportunities for China and Japan to develop their relationship at this moment?
Well, really, I think this is a very crucial moment for the two sides to develop the relationship, and 2 points to make. First, against the background of the COVID-19 pandemic, in order to minimize the impact of the pandemic on their social and economic development, it's very important for the two sides to deepen and strengthen their cooperation in terms of trade, as well as some other economic fields. China and Japan actually have been important partners to each other in the past more than 40 years.
Because everywhere you go, it don't matter if you are Chinese or you are Japanese, people that don't like
each other.
Asians, you're all Chinese to them or Japs.
Common interest between the two
you got a common enemy.
Actually encouraging nowadays against the new development in world situation, including the inauguration of U.S. President Trump in fields like globalization, like global governance, as well as non-traditional security issues. We do have a lot in common.
What do you think are the major factors hampering the bilateral ties from moving forward smoothly?
There are a lot of concrete issues, disputes there between the two sides, such as the Diaoyu Islands, the territory disputes, and the history issue, as well as the so-called geopolitical conflict between Beijing and Tokyo. But in my view, the central piece with the hugest influence on the relationship is, the basic obstacle hampering the relations from moving forward smoothly is the lack of mutual trust, including the lack of political mutual trust, as well as the lack of strategic mutual trust. Like some Japanese doubt that can China really take the road of a peaceful development, something like that. Actually, the two leaders just met in Osaka last year, and they raised 10-point consensus on developing the relations in which the two sides agreed, confirmed with each other to strengthen communication and cooperation in security, to promote the building of constructive bilateral security relations, and gradually set up solid strategic mutual trust. Nevertheless, in my view, it will still take a relatively long time for the two neighbors to build up such an ideal relationship, to shape the relations to such an ideal pattern.
That was Yang Boqiang at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences commenting on the relationship between China and Japan. Scientists are trying to figure out what's caused the unusual deaths of hundreds of elephants in Botswana in just 2 months. Gao Junia reports.
At the renowned Okavango Delta tourist destination in Botswana, over 350 elephants have been found dead since early May. Researchers have observed that some elephants, although alive, appear to be suffering from neurological disorders. Some were walking in circles, and others were dragging their hind legs as though paralyzed. Madi Reuben, an official with Botswana's Department of Wildlife and National Parks, says the government is working to detect the cause of the elephants' death, as well as their strange behaviors.
At this stage, it's difficult to really tell what could be the cause of the mortality. We have eliminated from the local labs the possibility of anthrax. Of course, you got a legal mines in Botswana.
Botswana's government has also ruled out poaching as a reason, noting the tusks have not been removed and no other large-scale animal deaths have been found.
Because they'll just steal it out of customs like they always do.
National Park Rescue, a wildlife conservation group.
Burn all this ivory.
He says it appears the elephants have died of either poisoning or
no proof the animal ever existed.
But it's a possibility that it's a poison of some form. There's also a possibility that it's a natural toxin, something occurring in the soil or the water, or that it's a disease.
They'll never let anybody take that tusk away.
Samples have been sent to labs in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Canada to identify the cause. Conservation biologist Case Lindsay says more elephants are dying.
We don't got elephants up here. I don't think they got elephants in the South America. Brought them there.
About to die, apparently. It seemed they were even dying, very suddenly in some of the cases. The carcasses were animals that had fallen down while walking.
Botswana has 130,000 elephants, accounting for 1/3 of the elephant population in Africa. There are concerns that whatever is causing the deaths could have a catastrophic impact on elephants across the continent.
I said all that disregarding however many are actually left.
French President Emmanuel Macron ousted his top security official in a government reshuffle following protests over police brutality.
Guns are
changes aimed at focusing on the post-virus economic recovery for the remaining 2 years of Macron's first term in office. Several ministers were replaced during the shakeup as Macron promised to modernize France while adapting to the new global upheavals and crises. Spokesperson Alexis Kohler announced the new composition of the government.
Sur proposition du Premier ministre. On the proposal of the Prime Minister, the President of the Republic has named Mr. Jean-Yves Le Drian, Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs. Madame Barbara Pompili, Minister of the Environmental Transition.
Edouard Philippe, who steered France through its coronavirus lockdown, resigned last week after 3 years in the post during Macron's presidency. Former Budget Minister Gerald Darmanin will replace Interior Minister Christophe Castaner, who has come under fire amid French protests against racial injustice and police brutality. Macron also named a controversial lawyer who has defended Julian Assange and suspected terrorists to be the head of the Justice Ministry. He also appointed a former Green Party lawmaker as head of a powerful Ministry of Ecological Transition, a top priority for Macron's presidency. Singapore's ruling parties held its traditional lunchtime rally online due to the coronavirus. The People's Action Party usually holds a daytime rally during general elections, and this has become a highlight of the election campaigns. Singapore Prime Minister and PAP Secretary General Lee Hsien Loong delivered a speech online via social media platforms. Singapore has one of the highest coronavirus infection rates in Asia, with close to 45,000 cases, but very few deaths at only 26. We're at 28 past the hour. Beijing will be cloudy and 33 degrees Celsius today. The clouds continue this evening with a low of 22. Chongqing will see a moderate rainfall in 28. Tonight, a low of 24. Lhasa will have some rain in 25, a low of 13. Hong Kong's getting thunder showers on the day, 5:31, a low of 27. In North America, Washington, D.C. is getting a slight rain in 32 degrees Celsius. New York City, much the same forecast with some rain in 32. In Africa, Nairobi is overcast in 22. And finally to Oceania, Port Vila is getting a slight rain in 27 Celsius. Time for a short break so far this hour. The Committee for Safeguarding National Security in Hong Kong has convened its first meeting. The Chinese government is speaking out against U.S. military exercises in the South China Sea, and students writing China's college entrance exams first have to undergo rigorous testing for the coronavirus. Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
You don't understand pause.
Join the most popular Chinese language learning page on Facebook by searching for CRI Learn Chinese. It's a quick yet fun way to achieve your language goals. Start your free lessons now with unlimited videos, photos, and text tutorials on expressions and Chinese culture. CRI Learn Chinese Facebook page. The world opens with 你好.
你好.
The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour brings you an hour of comprehensive news and information from both China and the rest of the world. A mix of news, sports, and entertainment. In-depth analysis of the day's big stories, as well as the most comprehensive business of the day. The Beijing Hour. Beijing Hour. Your very own window to China and the rest of the world. Want to know what's trending in China? China Plus News Facebook page helps you to discover the real China, from the latest news to quirky Chinese inventions, videos, photos, live streaming, and more. Join in the conversation today by searching for China Plus News on Facebook and discover its news, its people, its traditions and culture.
Actually, I can read the word for center of the universe. I just need center.
Open your eyes to the real China.
Center. That's a good one for center.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour. 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday.
Shane Bigham with you on this Tuesday morning. Still to come in business, U.S. stocks rise as tech shares rally. In sports, we have results from European football. In culture and entertainment, one of France's most famous tourist attractions has reopened after months of lockdown. There are a number of ways to contact us. You can talk to us on Twitter at China Plus News or log on to Facebook, China Plus News, for more news, videos, and analysis. Now checking the day's headlines. The Committee for Safeguarding National Security in Hong Kong has convened its first meeting. The committee was established on July 3rd in accordance with the stipulations of Hong Kong's national security law. It's chaired by the Hong Kong chief executive with the top liaison official from the mainland as its advisor. The committee is to analyze and assess developments in relation to safeguarding national security in the city. Information relating to its work will not be disclosed, and decisions made by it are not amenable to judicial review. The implementation rules for Article 43 of Hong Kong's national security law take effect today. It stipulates various measures that the Department for Safeguarding National Security can take when handling cases concerning offenses endangering national security. The Chinese ambassador to Britain says the new law on safeguarding national security in Hong Kong targets criminals while protecting the rights of the majority of people. Liu Xiaoming made the remarks to counter reports by British media, which he says have misinterpreted or distorted the law. The diplomat says the law introduces a framework to tackle elements intent on causing chaos and disruption. He says the law protects Hong Kong's autonomy and freedoms and safeguards the principle of one country, two systems, which is contrary to the British media reports.
National security law fully integrates the comprehensive jurisdiction of the central government and the high degree of autonomy enjoyed by Hong Kong SAR. It does not alter the current capitalist system in Hong Kong. It does not change the high degree of autonomy and legal system in the SAR. It does not affect Hong Kong's administrative, legislative, or independent judicial power, including that of final adjudication.
The law on safeguarding national security in Hong Kong took effect June 30th to address offenses of secessionism, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign powers. China and India have reaffirmed their commitment to easing tensions along their shared border. Special envoys of the two countries held talks over the phone yesterday. They agreed to strengthen negotiations through diplomatic channels and finish the disengagement of their troops as soon as possible. A deadly clash broke out between Chinese and Indian border guards in the Galwan Valley on June 15th. It left 20 Indian soldiers dead, while the number of casualties on the Chinese side has not been released.
It's not even setting off international exercises
conducted by the United States in the South China Sea pose a threat to regional safety. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian made the remarks after two U.S. aircraft carriers conducted exercises in the region shortly after China's military drills in the area.
The U.S. move is intended to sow discord among countries in the region, boost the militarization of the South China Sea, and undermine peace and stability in the South China Sea. The international community, especially the countries in the region, is fully aware of the U.S. intention.
Zhao adds that the U.S. has ulterior motives to conduct military exercises in the South China Sea at a time when the overall situation in the region is generally stable. He also stresses that China's military exercises in the South China Sea are within its sovereignty and are reasonable. Singapore's ruling parties held its traditional lunchtime rally online due to the coronavirus. The People's Action Party usually holds a daytime rally during general elections, and this has become a highlight of its election campaigns. Singapore Prime Minister and PAP Secretary General Lee Hsien Loong delivered his speech online via social media platforms.
All our experience since the beginning of this year has made clear just how important a good government is to fight COVID-19, support the economy, and get out of this crisis intact. This is what this election is about. Whom do you trust to get you through the very difficult times ahead?
Singapore has one of the highest coronavirus infection rates in Asia, with close to 45,000 cases, but very few deaths at only 26. The PAP has been praised for its economic management, but criticized for muzzling the media and dissenting voices. Singaporeans will vote in this election on Friday. At least 44 people have been reported dead as torrential rain battered Japan's southwestern region on Monday. The Kumamoto Prefecture government says 14 of the 44 deaths are from a nursing home near the Kuma River, which overflowed and caused extensive flooding. 10 other people are still missing. The Japan Meteorological Agency issued its highest level warning for heavy rain in the southwestern region of Kyushu, urging people to seek safe shelter. On Monday, around 250,000 residents were ordered to evacuate. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says his government will support all those affected by the floods and also urged people across the country to remain on alert. This is Shane Bigham live from the Chinese capital. Coming up in business, U.S. markets rise as tech shares rally.
You're listening to the Beijing Hour, 60 minutes of comprehensive news, your window on China and the world.
37 minutes past the hour. Turning to business now. U.S. stocks finished higher on Monday as a rally in major tech shares contributed to the market. The Dow Jones jumped 1.8%. The S&P 500 was up by 1.6%. The Nasdaq increased 2.2%. Shares of major U.S. tech giants such as Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and Netflix all closed higher. On the data front, economic activity in the U.S. non-manufacturing sector grew in June after 2 consecutive months of contraction. A non-manufacturing activity index jumped to a reading of 57.1 last month, the highest since February. Clear Harbor Asset Management CEO Aaron Kennan.
Market participants are trying to sort out the degree to which COVID could alter the reopening trajectory of the global economy. China's reopened, the Asian economies have generally been reopening reasonably well. Europe has generally reopened reasonably well with fits and starts, and I think that it's been a little more of a bumpy occurrence here in the United States.
European stocks also finished higher, with shares in London leading the region. The FTSE 100 is up by 2.1%. Germany's DAX is up 1.6%, and France's CAC 40 is up 1.5%. In Asia, stocks on the Chinese mainland soared on Monday. Market analyst Timothy Pope.
We're busting records again today as the markets shoot up. Turnover surpassed 1 trillion yuan for the third day.
Markets are open. You're fucking with us.
Of this kind of high trading that we've seen since March. The Shanghai Composite Index gained 5.7% to close just shy of 33.33. The CSI 300 was also up 5.7%. That takes its gains over the last 5 days to 14%, and that's the kind of run we haven't seen since the end of 2014. The CSI 300 is, of course, a measure of Shanghai and Shenzhen's biggest blue chips. But here there is an even more exclusive index as well, the SSE 50 here in Shanghai. That was up 6.8% today. Some of these gains on these indexes are because they're very heavy on financials, which are hitting the upper trading limits in a lot of cases today. Banks like Postal Savings Bank, Industrial Bank, China Merchants Bank were all up around 10%. Insurers too, China Life Insurance, New China Life, both up 10%, while the higher priced Ping An Insurance gained almost 8%. And that's before we even start on brokerages. Nearly all of them up by 10% today, not only feeding those gains, but feeding off them as the more buoyant markets are, the better the business outlook for these brokerages.
Hong Kong stocks also ended higher yesterday with the Hang Seng Index surging 3.8%. Elsewhere, Singapore stocks closed higher on Monday, with the Straits Times Index going up nearly 1.4%. Tokyo stocks ended higher on Monday as well, as Chinese shares sharp gains lifted the market move. The Nikkei gained 1.8%. In South Korea, the Kospi gained 1.7%.
Canadian Stock Exchange.
Asian shares scaled 4-month peaks on Monday, with stocks on the Chinese mainland leading gains regionally. It comes as investors count on super cheap liquidity and fiscal stimulus to sustain global economic recovery. On the Chinese mainland, the benchmark Shanghai Composite Index soared by over 5%, and the Shenzhen Component Index surged by over 4%. The number of A shares has exceeded $200 billion, the highest in 5 years. The Chi-Next Index for growth enterprises went up more than 2%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index also increased by around 4%. And with more on this, we're joined by financial analyst Einar Tangen. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what's behind this jump in China and other Asian markets?
Well, you just said it. Stimulus and liquidity, those are two things driving it. There's a lot of retail activity, obviously. The question is, how much did the institutionals weigh in? What's interesting is there seems to be a correlation now between good news in Asia now having a bigger effect in the West, in the bourses, and especially in the United States and in Europe. Very different from the old days when it would be something in the reverse, where positive news in those bourses would affect China.
Well, how much does the market performance right now reflect the actual status of the general economy?
Well, I have to say that worldwide, it's not reflective. In China, there's been a very sharp V. There's an expectation that China will continue to do well, especially in view of the fact that the United States may be stumbling here in terms of its economic reaction due to mishandling of the COVID-19, premature opening up, etc. like this. Chinese companies will still be needed to produce a lot of essential spare parts, things that just keep the economy moving. But long term, there are issues about a shrinking middle class in the United States. Also, the issue of how they're going to turn around this kind of small business situation. You could see a tremendous number of them going under. This is going to create new opportunities, but it also upsets the existing financial order.
What can we learn from the strong market growth in Asia and also in the U.S. when it comes to the post-pandemic economic recovery?
Well, I don't think that we're in a position right now to know exactly what's going to happen around the world. As I said, there are long-term troubling trends. But in Asia, you have the markets, you have the production. It looks increasingly like there'll be a separate economic bloc with ASEAN, China, and a little bit less known about exactly how Europe and the United States are going to react to this. Obviously, there are other factors in when you start considering Africa and South America in terms of resources. A lot of them are depending on a strong rebound by China to kind of, in essence, lead the world through